My name is Marina, and I was betrayed.
The rain poured relentlessly that day, drumming against the windows of the Grand Theater as Rafael Sequeira sat alone at the piano, his fingers motionless on the keys. The spotlight above him illuminated his figure, but his mind was elsewhere, on the memory of a church he'd never entered, a bride he'd never faced, and a decision that had haunted him for 6 long years. He glanced at the envelope in his hand, its edges worn from his constant fidgeting. Inside was a simple invitation to a recital, the name on it both familiar and foreign, Sofia Marina Sequeira, a child he had never met, bearing his name. Raphael's heart pounded as a single thought consumed him. What will she say when she sees me? And will she ever forgive me for the man I was? The Grand Theater was alive with anticipation. Thousands of elegantly dressed spectators filled the opulent hall, their hushed conversations blending with the faint rustle of silk and the clinking of glasses in the private boxes. The spotlight illuminated the polished ebony Steinway grand piano at center stage, its surface gleaming under the lights. Rafael Sequeira, the evening star, walked into the spotlight with the confidence of a man who had conquered the world. As he took his place at the piano, his tailored tuxedo clung to his lean frame, and his fingers hovered over the keys with the precision of an artist about to create magic. The applause that greeted him was thunderous, reverberating off the ornate walls, but Raphael barely registered it. His mind, sharp and calculating, was already on the performance. Fame demanded perfection, and Raphael had perfected the art of delivering exactly what his audience wanted: brilliance, passion, and mastery. The first notes filled the air, cascading into a melody so delicate yet powerful that the room seemed to hold its breath. Each chord told a story, but none of the captivated listeners could have guessed the story playing out in Raphael's mind. For amidst the rapturous applause and his meteoric rise to stardom, a memory lingered, a memory of a simpler stage, a smaller audience, and a woman whose love had once been his anchor. It had been 6 years since Raphael left Marina. 6 years since he walked out of the church on what was supposed to be their wedding day. The memory was as vivid as if it had happened hours ago. He had stood in the back room of the chapel, staring at his reflection in the mirror, dressed in a crisp white suit. Marina, radiant in her gown, was waiting at the altar. Her family, their friends, even the pastor, all were there to witness the union of two people who had spent years building a life together. But Raphael's phone had buzzed in his pocket, and when he glanced at the screen, his world shifted. It was a message from his manager, a promise of something he had chased for years, a contract with an international agency that would launch his career into the stratosphere. All he had to do was leave immediately to attend a meeting with the agency's board. Marina would understand, he thought. She knew his ambition. She had always supported his dreams. But as he glanced at the door that led to her, a gnawing voice in his mind told him she wouldn't. Not this time. He never stepped through that door. Instead, he left a note on the table and walked out of the church. Outside, a black limousine waited to whisk him away. The cheers of his future drowned out the sound of Marina's cries as she read his hurriedly scribbled words. "I'm sorry. I can't." The sound of applause brought Raphael back to the present. The last note of his performance hung in the air, followed by an eruption of cheers. He stood bowed and accepted the adoration of his audience with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Fame, as glorious as it was, had a price, and Raphael paid it every night when the lights dimmed and he was left alone with his thoughts, far from the grandeur of Raphael's world. Marina worked in a small music studio nestled in the heart of a quiet town. The studio was modest, its walls adorned with posters of composers and faded photographs of past students. Marina stood by the piano, her hands guiding the small fingers of a young boy as he stumbled through a beginner's piece. Her voice was calm, encouraging, and filled with the same warmth that once nurtured Raphael's dreams. Life had not been easy for Marina after that day in the church. The humiliation of being abandoned at the altar was compounded by the whispers of pity and judgment from those around her. But it was the discovery weeks later that she was pregnant that truly reshaped her world. She had named her daughter Sophia, a child who became the light in her darkest hours. Sophia, now 5, was a curious and lively girl with an uncanny ear for music. Her small hands often danced over the keys of their aging piano at home, creating melodies that reminded Marina of Raphael. It was a bittersweet reminder, one that brought joy and pain in equal measure. Despite everything, Marina refused to let her past define her future. She poured herself into her work, teaching private lessons and instilling a love of music in her students. The sun dipped below the horizon as Marina and Sophia walked home from the studio, hand in hand. The streets were quiet, the air crisp with the scent of autumn leaves. Sophia skipped along the sidewalk, humming a tune she had learned that afternoon, her laughter echoing through the empty street. Marina watched her, a soft smile playing on her lips. For all the struggles, Sophia was her greatest achievement, a melody that had brought harmony to her fractured life. Meanwhile, in a distant penthouse overlooking a bustling city, Raphael sat at his piano, staring at a blank sheet of music. The lavish room, adorned with awards and framed photographs of his performances, felt hollow. He reached for a glass of scotch, its amber liquid catching the light, and took a long sip. The weight of his choices bore down on him, heavy and unrelenting. For years, he had convinced himself that leaving Marina was necessary. But as the applause faded and the curtain fell each night, he was haunted by the question, what had he truly gained? He placed his hands on the keys, playing a melody that he hadn't touched in years, a song he had written for Marina. The notes filled the room, and for a fleeting moment, he felt the echoes of a love he had thrown away. As the final chord resonated, Raphael leaned back and closed his eyes. The hollow applause of his memories rang louder than the cheers of any audience. The sound of laughter echoed through the modest apartment as Marina watched Sophia twirl in the living room, clutching a small, stuffed bunny. The sunlight streaming through the curtains bathed the room in a golden glow, highlighting the well-worn furniture and the small piano tucked into the corner. It wasn't much, but to Marina, it was home, a sanctuary she had built brick by brick after her world had crumbled. Sophia, with her unruly dark curls and curious hazel eyes, was the spitting image of Raphael. Marina often caught herself staring at her daughter, marveling at how life had granted her this bittersweet reminder of a man she had once loved. Sophia was her greatest blessing and, at times, her greatest ache. "Mommy, look," Sophia giggled as she performed an exaggerated curtsy, holding the hem of her play dress as if she were on stage. Marina clapped, her applause exaggerated for effect. "Bravo, my little star," Sophia beamed, running to Marina and climbing into her lap. Marina held her close, burying her face in Sophia's curls. It was moments like these that reminded her why she had fought so hard to keep going, even when the odds seemed insurmountable. After Raphael left her, Marina had spent weeks in a daze, replaying every moment of their relationship and questioning where it had all gone wrong. The humiliation of being abandoned at the altar was a weight she carried daily, compounded by the whispers of pity and judgment from their small community. But the day she found out she was pregnant, everything changed. At first, the news terrified her. She was alone, her savings dwindling, and the thought of raising a child without support felt impossible. But as the months passed and Sophia grew inside her, so did Marina's resolve. She found a job teaching private music lessons, scraping together enough to move into a small apartment. When Sophia was born, Marina held her tiny daughter in her arms and promised that she would give her the best life she could, no matter the sacrifices. That promise shaped every decision Marina made. Her days were a delicate balance of work, parenting, and music. She took on as many students as she could, often staying up late to plan lessons or practice pieces she hadn't played in years. The small community conservatory where she worked part-time became her haven, a place where she could share her love of music with others while keeping her passion alive. Sophia, Ever curious and full of energy, often accompanied Marina to the conservatory. At just 5 years old, she had already developed an ear for music that astonished everyone who heard her play. Marina remembered the first time Sophia had climbed onto the piano bench, her small hands stretching to reach the keys. She had played a simple melody, hesitant at first, but with a confidence that seemed to bloom from somewhere deep within her. "You've got magic in those fingers, just like your daddy," Marina had whispered, her heart aching as she said the words. Sophia didn't know much about Raphael. Marina had decided early on to keep the details vague, unsure of how to explain the complicated truth to a child so young. Whenever Sophia asked about her father, Marina would say simply, "He's a wonderful pianist just like you." One afternoon, as Marina and Sophia walked to the conservatory, Sophia skipped ahead, humming a tune she had made up. The crisp autumn air carried the scent of fallen leaves, and the sound of their footsteps on the pavement filled the quiet street. Marina carried a bag filled with sheet music and snacks, her mind already on the lessons she had planned for the day. "Mommy, do you think I can play in a big theater one day like you and Daddy?" Sophia asked, turning to look at her mother with wide, expectant eyes. Marina hesitated, her heart tightening at the question. "Of course you can, sweetheart. But remember, it's not just about playing in big theaters. Music is about sharing your heart, no matter where you are." Sophia nodded, her little face scrunching in thought. "Like you do with your students?" "Exactly," Marina said, smiling. The conservatory was small but full of life. Children and teenagers bustled through the halls, clutching instruments and sheet music. Marina greeted her colleagues as she led Sophia to a room with a slightly battered piano. "Can I play while you teach?" Sophia asked eagerly. "Just for a little while," Marina said, ruffling her daughter's curls. As Sophia began to play a cheerful tune, Marina prepared for her next lesson. Her student, a shy teenage boy named Lucas, shuffled into the room carrying a violin case. He was one of her more promising pupils, though his confidence often wavered. "You've been practicing the scales we talked about, right?" Marina asked, her tone encouraging. Lucas nodded, setting up his violin. As he began to play, Marina offered gentle corrections, guiding him with patience and warmth. She loved teaching, even on the hard days. Watching her students grow and find their own voices through music was its own reward. The afternoon passed in a blur of lessons and laughter. By the time Marina and Sophia returned home, the sun was setting, casting a warm glow over their small apartment. After dinner, Sophia climbed into Marina's lap with a book, her eyelids drooping as Marina read to her. As Sophia drifted off to sleep, Marina carried her to bed, tucking her in and kissing her forehead. Standing in the doorway, Marina watched her daughter for a moment, a wave of emotion washing over her. Despite the challenges, Sophia was her anchor, her reason for everything. Later that night, as Marina sat at the piano, she let her fingers wander over the keys. The melody she played was one she hadn't touched in years, a piece Raphael had composed for her when they were younger. Tears blurred her vision, but she didn't stop playing. Music was her way of processing the pain she rarely let herself feel. The notes faded into the quiet of the room, leaving Marina alone with her thoughts. She had built a good life for herself and Sophia, but the scars of the past still lingered. And though she didn't know it yet, the past was about to return, bringing with it the man who had shaped so much of her world and shattered it. The train rattled down the tracks, its wheels cutting through the silence of the countryside. Raphael sat by the window, his reflection merging with the blurred landscape of rolling hills and scattered towns. He rested his chin on his hand, his sharp suit wrinkled from hours of travel. The faded leather duffel bag at his feet held all he could manage to carry: sheet music, a handful of clothes, and the memories he couldn't leave behind. As the train neared his hometown, a knot formed in Raphael's stomach. The decision to return wasn't easy. Pride had kept him away for years, but pride didn't pay the bills, and it certainly didn't silence the gnawing emptiness that had consumed him. His last major sponsor had dropped him months ago, citing dwindling ticket sales and a shift in their branding strategy. Raphael's international career, once as dazzling as the grand chandeliers of the theaters he played in, had crumbled. He leaned back in his seat and closed his eyes, but the memories wouldn't let him rest. The church, Marina, the note he'd left behind. He had built his fame on the ashes of that day, convincing himself it was the price of ambition. Now, returning to the place where it all began, he wasn't sure he'd be welcomed, or if he deserved to be. The town came into view as the train slowed to a stop. Raphael stepped onto the platform, his polished shoes tapping against the worn wooden planks. The air smelled of damp earth and distant rain, a scent he hadn't realized he missed. The station was as small as he remembered, a single bench and a sleepy attendant behind the counter. Raphael adjusted his bag on his shoulder and made his way into town. The streets were familiar yet changed. New storefronts had appeared, and others were gone entirely. The cafe where he and Marina used to spend lazy Sunday mornings had been replaced by a boutique. As he walked, people glanced at him, some with faint recognition, others with open curiosity. He wondered how many of them remembered the scandal he had left behind. His feet led him to a quiet park in the center of town. It was there, on a creaking bench under an old oak tree, that he had once confessed his dreams to Marina. She had listened with rapt attention, her eyes sparkling with encouragement. "You're going to be incredible," she had said, her faith in him unshakable. Raphael shook his head, trying to dispel the memory. Dwelling on the past wouldn't help him now. He needed a plan. He knew where Marina would be. She had always loved teaching, and the conservatory had been a second home for her even when they were younger. As he approached the building, a mix of anticipation and dread washed over him. The conservatory was modest, its white facade slightly weathered, but there was life inside. The sound of a piano and children's laughter drifted through an open window. Raphael hesitated at the door, his hand hovering over the handle. What would he even say? Sorry for abandoning you? Sorry for building my dream on the rubble of ours? Before he could talk himself out of it, the door creaked open and he stepped inside. The hallway smelled of old wood and sheet music. His footsteps echoed softly as he made his way toward the sound of the piano. Through a cracked door, he saw her. Marina was sitting on the piano bench, her posture straight, her hands guiding a young boy's fingers over the keys. Her voice was calm, encouraging, and unmistakably hers. For a moment, Raphael forgot how to breathe. She looked the same and yet different. Her hair was pulled back into a loose braid, a few strands framing her face. There was a weariness in her eyes, but also a quiet strength that hadn't been there before. The lesson ended, and the boy gathered his books, thanking Marina before leaving the room. Raphael stepped into the doorway, his heart pounding. "Hello, Marina," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Marina turned, her expression freezing as her eyes met his. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The air between them was heavy with unspoken words and years of silence. "Raphael," she said finally, her voice steady but cold. "What are you doing here?" He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came. How could he explain everything in a single sentence? Instead, he reached into his bag and pulled out a folder of sheet music, holding it out to her as if it could explain his presence. Marina crossed her arms, her gaze unwavering. "You think sheet music is going to erase the past?" "No," Raphael admitted, lowering his hand. "I'm not here to erase anything. I wanted to see you." "After 6 years?" she asked, her voice rising slightly. "You wanted to see me after 6 years?" Raphael flinched at the anger in her tone, but didn't look away. "I know I don't have the right to ask for anything, but I'm here now. I want to make things right." Marina laughed, a bitter sound that cut through him. "You can't just walk back into my life and pretend the last 6 years didn't happen. You left me, Raphael. You left me at the altar like I was nothing. Her words hit him like a blow, but he forced himself to stay grounded. I know I hurt you, Marina, and I'll never forgive myself for that. But I want to do better. I want to help. Help, she repeated, her eyes narrowing. Help who? Me? The conservatory? Yourself? Before Raphael could answer, a small voice interrupted them. Mommy! Raphael turned, and his heart stopped. A little girl stood in the doorway, clutching a stuffed bunny. Her dark curls framed a face so achingly familiar that it felt like looking into a mirror of his past. The girl's hazel eyes, wide with curiosity, met his, and something unspoken passed between them. Marina's expression softened as she crouched to the girl's level. Sophia, sweetheart, go wait for me in the other room, okay? But who is that man? Sophia asked, pointing to Raphael. Marina hesitated, glancing at Raphael before answering. He's an old friend. Sophia tilted her head, studying him. He looks like me. The room fell silent, the weight of the child's words hanging in the air. Marina gently guided Sophia out of the room, closing the door behind her. When she turned back to Raphael, her expression was hard again. She's yours, Marina said, her voice barely above a whisper. Your daughter. Not that you deserve to know her. Raphael felt the world tilt beneath him. His daughter. The realization hit him like a tidal wave, sweeping away everything else. He gripped the back of a chair for support, his breath shallow. Marina, he started, but she cut him off. Don't, she said, her voice trembling with anger and pain. You don't get to walk in here and act like a father. You made your choice 6 years ago, and it wasn't us. She walked past him, her shoulders stiff, and left him standing alone in the empty room. The sound of Sophia's laughter echoed faintly from the hallway, a reminder of everything Raphael had missed, and everything he might never have. The days that followed Raphael's return were a whirlwind of emotions for both him and Marina. The conservatory, usually a haven for music and joy, now felt charged with tension whenever Raphael appeared. Marina, who had always prided herself on her composure, found it increasingly difficult to maintain her calm. Each time she saw him, memories she had buried clawed their way to the surface, demanding her attention. Raphael, for his part, was trying to navigate the storm he had unleashed. Every interaction with Marina left him reeling, a fresh reminder of the damage he had caused. But nothing was more overwhelming than the revelation of Sophia, his daughter, a child he hadn't known existed, now suddenly standing before him like a living embodiment of everything he had forsaken. It wasn't long before Raphael found a way to see Sophia again. The conservatory's weekly recital night provided him with the perfect opportunity. He arrived early, his presence drawing whispers and sideways glances from parents and students alike. Though many recognized him as the once famous pianist, they also remembered the scandal of his abrupt departure. Marina had earned their respect over the years, and Raphael's return felt like an unwelcome disruption. Sophia, however, was too young to notice the murmurs. She sat in the front row, swinging her legs back and forth as she clutched her stuffed bunny. When she spotted Raphael, her face lit up with a smile that sent a pang through his chest. He approached cautiously, kneeling to her level. "Hi there," he said softly. "Hi." Sophia beamed, tilting her head. "Are you here to watch the recital?" "I am," Raphael replied. "I heard there's a very talented pianist performing tonight." Sophia giggled. "That's me." Marina, who had been adjusting a microphone on stage, turned and spotted them. Her eyes darkened as she hurried over, her heels clicking sharply against the wooden floor. "Sophia," she said gently but firmly, "why don't you go sit with Mrs. Delgado for a minute? I need to talk to this gentleman." Sophia nodded obediently, though she glanced back at Raphael with curiosity as she ran off to join one of Marina's colleagues. "What are you doing here?" Marina demanded in a low voice, crossing her arms. I wanted to see her, Raphael admitted, his voice steady. I wanted to see you both. Marina's eyes flashed. You don't get to just insert yourself into her life like this. She doesn't even know who you are. And whose fault is that? Raphael shot back before he could stop himself. Marina flinched as if struck, and Raphael immediately regretted his words. I didn't mean... No, Marina interrupted, her voice trembling with controlled fury. You don't get to blame me. I protected her, Raphael. I gave her stability, love, and a life without the constant disappointment of waiting for someone who would never show up. Raphael fell silent, guilt crashing over him like a wave. I didn't know about her, he said after a long pause. If I had... You would have what? Marina snapped. Stayed? Chosen us over your career? Don't lie to yourself, Raphael. You made it clear where your priorities were when you walked out of that church. The raw pain in her voice cut him deeply, but Raphael knew he couldn't walk away now. Not again. I know I don't deserve her, he said quietly. Or you. But I want to try, Marina. I want to be part of her life, if you'll let me. Marina stared at him, her expression unreadable. Finally, she sighed and rubbed her temples. Right now, Sophia doesn't know who you really are, she said. And until I figure out how to tell her, you don't say a word. Do you understand? Raphael nodded, relief mingling with apprehension. Thank you. Don't thank me, Marina replied. This isn't for you. It's for her. The recital began shortly after, and Raphael watched as Sophia climbed onto the piano bench, her small fingers poised over the keys. The first notes of her piece filled the room, sweet and tentative. But by the second stanza, her confidence blossomed. She played with a natural grace that brought tears to Raphael's eyes. As the applause erupted, Raphael clapped the loudest. Sophia beamed, looking directly at him, and for the first time in years, Raphael felt something he hadn't allowed himself to feel: hope. The days that followed were a delicate dance. Marina allowed Raphael to see Sophia occasionally, but always under her watchful eye. She kept their interactions brief and made it clear that any misstep would mean the end of his involvement. One afternoon, Raphael stopped by the conservatory to drop off a donation. He had purchased a new set of music stands and a collection of beginner sheet music for the students. Marina greeted him at the door, her expression wary. Why are you doing this? She asked as he handed her the receipt for the supplies. Because I want to help, Raphael said simply. Marina studied him for a moment, searching for ulterior motives. If this is some kind of PR move... It's not, Raphael interrupted, his tone firm. I don't care about my image anymore, Marina. I care about Sophia. And you. Marina's expression softened slightly, but her walls remained firmly in place. We'll see, she said, turning to walk away. Later that evening, Marina sat on the couch with Sophia, helping her with a new piece of music. The notes were simple but challenging for her small hands. Mommy, why does that man come to the conservatory? Sophia asked suddenly, her brow furrowed. Marina's heart skipped a beat. He just wants to help, sweetheart, she said carefully. Does he like me? Sophia pressed, her innocent eyes wide with curiosity. Marina hesitated, then smiled softly. I think he does. Very much. Sophia grinned and returned to her music, but Marina couldn't shake the knot of worry in her chest. How long could she keep the truth from Sophia? And when the time came, would Raphael prove himself worthy of being a father? In the quiet of the night, Marina sat at the piano, her fingers hovering over the keys. She played the melody Raphael had written for her all those years ago, her emotions swirling with each note, for better or worse. He was back, and nothing in their lives would ever be the same again. The morning sun poured through the conservatory's windows, casting soft, golden light over the practice rooms. The smell of polished wood and old sheet music lingered in the air, mingling with the faint hum of students warming up their instruments. Marina sat in her small office, going through a stack of applications for the conservatory's scholarship program. Her coffee had gone cold untouched as she struggled to focus. Raphael's presence in town continued to unsettle her. Each time she saw him, memories she'd worked so hard to bury came rushing back. Yet, the way Sophia's eyes lit up when he was around chipped away at her resolve. Sophia didn't know the truth, and Marina wasn't ready to open that door. Not yet. Her thoughts were interrupted by a knock at the door. She looked up to see Raphael standing there, holding a bouquet of sunflowers. He looked out of place in his tailored jacket and slacks, his polished appearance contrasting sharply with the casual, bustling energy of the conservatory. "What are you doing here?" Marina asked, her voice steady but laced with irritation. "I came to talk," Raphael said, stepping into the room. He placed a bouquet on her desk. "And to give you these?" Marina arched an eyebrow, eyeing the flowers suspiciously. "You think sunflowers are going to fix everything?" Raphael smiled faintly. "No, but I thought you might like them. They reminded me of you, bright, strong and rooted." Marina sighed, resisting the urge to smile. "What do you want, Raphael?" "I've been thinking," he began, his tone earnest. "I want to do more to help, not just Sophia, but you and the conservatory. This place is important to you, and I'd like to support it." Marina leaned back in her chair, crossing her arms. "Support it how? Financially?" "Yes," Raphael admitted, "but not just with money. I can give lessons, help with recitals, mentor students who want to pursue music professionally. I have experience that could be valuable here." Marina studied him, her skepticism evident. "And what do you get out of this?" "Nothing," Raphael said firmly. "I don't want anything in return. I just want to be useful, Marina. I need to feel like I'm contributing to something real." She softened slightly, though she wasn't ready to trust him. "We don't need a savior, Raphael. We've managed just fine without you." "I know," he said, his voice quiet. "But maybe I need this as much as you don't. Please, just let me help." Marina hesitated, torn between her instinct to protect herself and Sophia and the possibility that Raphael's intentions were genuine. Finally, she nodded. "Fine, but don't think this means I'm letting you off the hook." Raphael smiled, a hint of relief washing over him. "Understood." That afternoon, Raphael joined a group of students in one of the practice rooms. The children were hesitant at first, their eyes wide with awe as they recognized him from the posters and videos still floating around online. But as Raphael sat at the piano and began to play, the room came alive with excitement. "Who wants to try this?" he asked after demonstrating a complex passage from a Mozart sonata. Hands shot up, and soon Raphael was guiding the students, his patience and warmth surprising even himself. It had been years since he taught anyone, but the joy on their faces reignited something he thought he'd lost. Marina watched from the doorway, her arms crossed. She couldn't deny the way the students gravitated toward him, their enthusiasm contagious. For a brief moment, she saw the man she had fallen in love with all those years ago, the man who had once shared her dream of bringing music to others. Later that evening, as the students filed out of the conservatory, Raphael stayed behind to tidy up the practice room. Marina approached him, her expression unreadable. "You were good with them," she admitted reluctantly. "Thank you," Raphael said, glancing up at her. "They're talented. You've done an incredible job here." Marina shrugged, brushing off the compliment. "It's not just me. It's the students, the other teachers, the community. We built this together." "I can see that," Raphael said. He hesitated and added, "And I want to be part of it." Marina didn't respond, but the tension between them felt slightly less heavy. The following weeks brought small but significant changes. Raphael became a regular presence at the conservatory, helping wherever he could. He repaired old instruments, assisted with lesson planning, and even stepped in as an accompanist during recitals. Sophia, unaware of the growing complexity between her mother and Raphael, was delighted by his involvement. She often ran to him with questions about music, her excitement spilling over into long, animated conversations. Marina couldn't help but notice how Raphael's eyes softened whenever he looked at Sophia, a mix of pride and regret etched into his features. One evening, after a long day at the conservatory, Raphael and Marina found themselves alone in the main hall, tidying up after a student performance. The soft hum of the overhead lights filled the silence between them. "You're different," Marina said suddenly, her voice quiet but firm. Raphael paused, looking at her. "Different how?" "Less selfish," she said, her tone guarded. "You're not the man who left me at the altar. Or at least, you're trying not to be." "I'm not that man anymore," Raphael said, his voice heavy with sincerity. "I've made so many mistakes, Marina, and I know I can't erase them. But I want to be better. For Sophia, for you, and for myself." Marina held his gaze, her walls cracking just slightly. "Actions speak louder than words, Raphael. You're doing the right things now, but it's going to take more than a few good deeds to fix what's broken." "I know," he said. "I'm not expecting forgiveness overnight. I just want the chance to prove that I've changed." Marina nodded, though the vulnerability in her eyes betrayed her lingering doubts. As they finished cleaning, Raphael sat at the piano, his fingers gliding over the keys. The melody he played was soft and familiar, a piece he had written for Marina during their time together. She froze, her breath catching as the notes filled the room. "I still remember this," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "So do I," Raphael replied, his hands never faltering. "I've played it 1,000 times over the years, trying to remind myself of what I gave up." Marina didn't respond, but her heart ached with the weight of his words. She didn't know if she could trust him again, but a part of her wanted to believe that the man sitting at the piano was truly different. As Raphael played the final note, the room fell silent. The unspoken tension between them lingered, fragile yet undeniable. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was a start. The conservatory buzzed with its usual rhythm. The chatter of students, the warm hum of pianos, and the occasional burst of laughter from the younger children. Raphael was in one of the practice rooms with Sophia, helping her with a tricky passage in a beginner's piece. Her small fingers hovered over the keys, hesitant but determined. "Relax your hands," Raphael said gently, crouching beside her. "It's not about speed. It's about telling the story with the music." Sophia nodded, her brows furrowed in concentration. She tried again, her touch softer this time, and the notes flowed more smoothly. Raphael smiled. "There you go," he said. "Perfect." Sophia looked up at him, beaming. "Really? Really?" Raphael replied, ruffling her curls. From the doorway, Marina watched silently, her emotions tangled. Raphael had slipped into the role of a mentor and, in subtle ways, a father. She couldn't deny how much Sophia adored him or how he seemed to light up in her presence. But that only made everything more complicated. Later that afternoon, Marina found Raphael in the main hall, inspecting a cracked cello. He looked up as she approached, his expression neutral but expectant. "We need to talk," Marina said, her voice firm. "About Sophia?" Raphael asked, setting the cello aside. Marina nodded. "I can't keep dodging her questions. She's going to figure it out eventually." "Then let me tell her," Raphael said, standing. Marina's eyes flashed. "No, she's 5, Raphael. She barely understands what it means to have a father, let alone why you haven't been around." "Marina, I want to take responsibility," Raphael said, his tone pleading. "I want her to know the truth from me, not someone else." Marina crossed her arms, her frustration evident. "You don't get to decide when or how this happens. I've been the one raising her, answering her questions, being there for her every day. You've been here for what? A few weeks." Raphael flinched at the sharpness in her words but didn't back down. "I understand that, Marina, but I'm not going anywhere. She deserves to know who I am." Marina sighed, rubbing her temples. This isn't just about Sophia. It's about me. I don't know if I can trust you to stay, Raphael. You left once before. How do I know you won't do it again? The weight of her question hung in the air. Raphael's jaw tightened, his eyes filled with a mix of guilt and determination. You don't, he admitted. All I can do is prove to you that I won't, but you have to give me the chance. Marina didn't respond. Instead, she turned and walked away, leaving Raphael standing alone in the empty hall. That evening, as Marina tucked Sophia into bed, her daughter looked up at her with curious eyes. "Mommy," Sophia said, clutching her stuffed bunny, "why does Raphael always come to the conservatory?" Marina hesitated, her heart sinking. "He wants to help, sweetheart. He likes music just like we do." Sophia frowned, clearly unsatisfied with the answer. "He looks at me like he knows me, like he's my family." The innocence of her words brought tears to Marina's eyes. She leaned down and kissed Sophia's forehead, forcing a smile. "Get some sleep, my love. We'll talk more tomorrow." Sophia nodded, though her expression remained thoughtful as she closed her eyes. Marina sat by her bed for a long time, watching her daughter's peaceful face and wondering how much longer she could shield her from the truth. The following day, as Marina prepared for a busy afternoon of lessons, Raphael received an unexpected phone call. It was from his former manager, someone he hadn't spoken to in over a year. "Raphael," the man said, his voice upbeat. "Good news. I've lined up an opportunity for you. A European tour, 5 cities, all expenses paid. It's your chance to get back on top." Raphael's chest tightened. A year ago, he would have leaped at the chance. But now, the idea of leaving filled him with dread. "Thanks," Raphael said cautiously, "but I'm not sure if it's the right time." "Not the right time?" his manager repeated, incredulous. "You've been out of the game too long. This could put you back on the map." "I need to think about it," Raphael said before hanging up. The offer weighed heavily on his mind as he walked to the conservatory. Could he balance his old life with the new one he was trying to build? Could he risk leaving Marina and Sophia, even temporarily, without undoing all the progress he had made? That afternoon, Raphael found Marina in her office, sorting through stacks of paperwork. She looked up, surprised to see the conflicted expression on his face. "What's wrong?" she asked, her tone wary. "I got an offer," Raphael said, sitting across from her. "A tour, Europe, 5 cities. Marina's hands froze, her expression hardening. "And you're telling me because I don't know if I should take it," Raphael admitted. Marina leaned back in her chair, her eyes narrowing. "So, you're asking for my permission?" "No," Raphael said quickly. "I'm asking for your opinion. I've been trying to rebuild something here with you, with Sophia. If I leave, even for a few months, then you're repeating history," Marina finished for him, her voice sharp. "Do you even hear yourself, Raphael? You're doing the same thing you did 6 years ago, putting your career first." "It's not like that," Raphael insisted. "I'm trying to make a living, Marina, to provide for Sophia, for you." "I don't need your money," Marina interrupted. "What Sophia needs is stability. She needs to know you're not going to disappear the moment something better comes along." The word stung, but Raphael knew she was right. "I don't want to make the same mistake," he said quietly. "That's why I'm telling you now, because I don't want to make this decision alone." Marina sighed, her anger softening into exhaustion. "I don't know what to tell you, Raphael. I've spent years protecting Sophia from disappointment. If you leave now, even if it's for a good reason, you're going to prove every fear I've ever had about you." Raphael nodded, his heart heavy. I won't go," he said finally. "I can't risk losing you both again." Marina didn't respond, but a flicker of relief crossed her face. As the day turned to evening, Raphael sat at the piano in one of the practice rooms, playing softly as he reflected on the choices before him. He knew Marina still doubted him, and he couldn't blame her. Trust was fragile, and rebuilding it would take more than words. For now, staying was the only choice he could make. He didn't know if it would be enough, but it was a start. The early autumn air was crisp as the sun dipped low in the sky, casting a golden glow over the small town. At the conservatory, the sound of a violin floated through the air, joined by the faint laughter of students. Inside, Marina sat at her desk, trying to organize sheet music for the next recital. But her focus was elsewhere, her thoughts tangled with doubt and frustration. Raphael had become an undeniable presence in her life and Sophia's. Despite her initial resistance, she couldn't deny the effort he was making. He was there, helping at the conservatory, teaching the students, and most of all, connecting with Sophia. Yet, the shadows of the past lingered. Marina couldn't shake the fear that history would repeat itself. Her thoughts were interrupted by Sophia bursting into the office, her face lit with excitement. She clutched a drawing in her hand, the lines uneven but vibrant with color. "Mommy, look what I made!" Sophia exclaimed, holding up the picture. Marina smiled, taking the drawing and examining it. It was a crude but sweet depiction of their little family. Marina, Sophia, and Raphael standing together, holding hands under a bright sun. "It's beautiful, sweetheart," Marina said, her chest tightening as she looked at Raphael's figure in the picture. "Do you think Raphael will like it?" Sophia asked eagerly, bouncing on her toes. "I'm sure he will," Marina replied, tucking a stray curl behind Sophia's ear. "Why don't you go show it to him?" Sophia darted off, her laughter echoing down the hallway. Marina sat back in her chair, staring at the drawing. The simplicity of it hurt. It was the kind of idyllic image Sophia wanted, but life was rarely that neat. A knock at the door drew her attention. Raphael stood in the doorway, his expression cautious. "Am I interrupting?" he asked. "No," Marina said, gesturing for him to come in. "What's up?" "I wanted to talk to you," Raphael said, closing the door behind him. "About Sophia." Marina tensed, folding her arms across her chest. "What about her?" "She showed me her drawing," Raphael said, a soft smile on his face. "She called me daddy." Marina's heart sank. She had known this moment was coming, but hearing it out loud still took her by surprise. "I didn't encourage it," Raphael added quickly. "But I didn't correct her either. I didn't know what to say." Marina let out a slow breath, trying to steady herself. "Sophia is a child, Raphael. She doesn't understand the complexities of this situation. To her, you're just someone who makes her happy. But if you leave again, it'll break her heart." "I'm not going anywhere," Raphael said firmly. "I've already turned down the tour. I'm here, Marina. For good." Marina's eyes widened slightly. "You turn it down?" "Yes," Raphael said. "Because I meant what I said. I'm not repeating my mistakes. Sophia deserves better, and so do you." Marina searched his face for any hint of doubt, but found none. She wanted to believe him, but years of hurt made it hard to let her guard down. "That's a big step," she said carefully, "but it doesn't erase the past." "I know," Raphael said, "but I hope it shows you that I'm serious." Before Marina could respond, Sophia ran back into the room, holding Raphael's hand. "Raphael, can you play the piano with me?" she asked, her voice full of excitement. Raphael glanced at Marina, silently asking for her permission. She hesitated, then nodded. "Sure, little star," Raphael said, smiling at Sophia. "Let's go." The two disappeared down the hallway, leaving Marina alone with her thoughts. That evening, Marina walked into the conservatory's main hall to find Raphael and Sophia at the piano. Sophia sat on his lap, her small hands resting on the keys as he guided her through a simple melody. The sight made Marina's heart ache. It was a glimpse of something she had once dreamed of, a family united by music. As the song ended, Sophia clapped her hands, her laughter ringing out. Raphael kissed the top of her head, his expression full of genuine affection. Bedtime, Sophia, Marina called softly. Okay, Mommy, Sophia said, sliding off Raphael's lap. She gave him a quick hug before running over to Marina. Good night, Raphael, Sophia called as Marina led her out of the hall. Raphael stayed behind, his hands resting on the piano keys. He played a few aimless notes, lost in thought. When Marina returned a few minutes later, she found him still there, staring at the piano as if searching for answers. Why do you look like the world is ending? Marina asked, leaning against the doorway. Raphael chuckled softly, shaking his head. Just thinking. About how I got here, he said, turning to face her, and how close I came to losing everything that really mattered. Marina crossed her arms, her expression guarded. It's easy to say things like that when you're here. But what happens when life gets complicated? When things aren't so convenient? I'm not the same man I was 6 years ago, Raphael said, his voice steady. I made the wrong choice then, and I've been paying for it ever since. But I'm here now, Marina. I'm not asking you to forget what I did. I'm asking you to let me prove that I've changed. Marina hesitated, her walls cracking ever so slightly. You're saying all the right things, Raphael, but words only go so far. I know, he said. That's why I'm staying. No matter how long it takes, I'll keep showing up for you, for Sophia, for this place, because it's where I'm supposed to be. The sincerity in his voice shook something loose in Marina, though she wasn't ready to admit it. I guess we'll see, she said quietly. As she turned to leave, Raphael called after her. Marina, he said, his voice soft but firm. Thank you for giving me this chance. Marina paused, her back to him. Don't thank me yet, Raphael. You still have a lot to prove. With that, she walked out, leaving Raphael alone in the empty hall. He sat at the piano for a long time, playing softly as the echoes of his music filled the room. For the first time in years, he felt a glimmer of hope, a chance to rebuild what he had lost, one note at a time. The conservatory was alive with the hum of activity as students prepared for an upcoming recital. The main hall, usually quiet during the day, was filled with the sound of overlapping melodies and bursts of laughter. Parents gathered in clusters near the entrance, chatting as they waited for their children. Marina moved through the crowd with practiced ease, clipboard in hand, offering words of encouragement and the occasional correction to the younger students. In the center of the room, Raphael knelt beside a young boy struggling to adjust the strings on his violin. With a steady hand, Raphael fixed the issue and guided the boy through a simple warm-up exercise. The boy's tentative smile as he finally produced a clear note didn't escape Marina's notice. She stopped a few feet away, her arms crossed as she observed him. He had a way with the students, his patience and warmth disarming even the shyest among them. It was a side of Raphael she hadn't fully seen before, and it unsettled her. It was easier to be angry with the man who had left her. This version of Raphael, a caring mentor, a devoted father figure, was harder to resist. You're good with them, Marina said when he finally noticed her. Raphael straightened, brushing his hands on his slacks. They make it easy. I see a lot of myself in them. Eager, nervous, desperate to prove themselves. Marina tilted her head, a wry smile tugging at her lips. Let's hope they don't pick up your knack for running away when things get hard. Raphael winced, but her tone lacked the bite it once had. Fair point, but I'm trying to teach them better. Marina's smile faded as her gaze softened. They do look up to you, you know. Sophia especially. Hearing his daughter's name made Raphael's expression shift, his eyes brightening with a mix of pride and guilt. She's incredible, Marina. Everything she does amazes me. Marina nodded, her voice quiet. She's a good kid. She's resilient. She gets that from you, Raphael said, his tone full of sincerity. Marina looked away, uncomfortable with the praise. She was still learning how to navigate this new dynamic between them. For years, she had been the sole protector of Sophia's world. But now Raphael was stepping into that space, and she wasn't sure how to let him. Later that evening, Marina found herself walking into one of the practice rooms where Raphael and Sophia were working together at the piano. Sophia's laughter spilled out into the hallway as Raphael playfully tapped out an off-key version of Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. "You're terrible at that," Sophia giggled, her small hands covering her mouth. "I'm not terrible," Raphael protested dramatically. "I'm just experimenting." Marina leaned against the doorframe, a rare smile crossing her face as she watched the scene. Raphael's silliness was infectious, and Sophia was clearly thriving under his attention. "You're making a mess of that song," Marina teased, stepping into the room. Raphael turned, grinning. "I call it artistic freedom." Sophia seems to approve. "She's polite," Marina said, arching an eyebrow. Sophia jumped off the piano bench and ran to Marina, hugging her tightly. "Mommy, Raphael's so funny. He made the song sound like a clown." "Well, he is kind of a clown," Marina said, ruffling Sophia's curls. "Hey!" Raphael protested, feigning offense. Sophia giggled and returned to the piano, leaving Marina and Raphael standing a few feet apart. The playful atmosphere slowly faded as the two adults locked eyes, an unspoken tension building between them. "She adores you," Marina said quietly. "I adore her," Raphael replied, his voice steady. "And I'll never take that for granted." Marina studied him for a moment, her defenses wavering. "You've been doing well with her, better than I expected." Raphael's expression softened. "That means a lot coming from you." "Don't get used to it," Marina said, though her tone was less sharp than before. As the weeks passed, Raphael became an even more integral part of the conservatory. He organized small workshops for the students, sharing stories from his time on international stages and giving them tips on performance technique. The children were mesmerized by his tales, their admiration for him growing with each passing day. One afternoon, Raphael surprised everyone by donating a brand new set of instruments to the conservatory. The older students crowded around the shiny new violins, cellos, and flutes, their excitement palpable. Marina watched from a distance, her emotions conflicted. When the commotion died down, she approached Raphael, her arms crossed. "You didn't have to do that," she said, her tone cautious. "I wanted to," Raphael replied simply. "This place has given me so much in just a few months. I wanted to give something back." Marina nodded, though her skepticism lingered. "You're making it hard for me to stay mad at you, you know." "Good," Raphael said with a small smile. "Maybe that's a sign we're moving in the right direction." Marina didn't respond, but the flicker of a smile on her lips didn't go unnoticed. That evening, after Sophia was asleep, Marina found Raphael sitting at the piano in the main hall. He was playing softly, his fingers moving over the keys with a quiet elegance. "Still practicing?" Marina asked, her voice breaking the silence. Raphael looked up, his expression thoughtful. "Just thinking to my fingers, I guess." Marina walked over and sat on the bench beside him. "What's on your mind?" "You," Raphael admitted. "Sophia. This place. How much I've missed." Marina sighed, her gaze fixed on the piano keys. "You can't change the past, Raphael." "I know," he said, "but I can try to make up for it. I can be here now." Marina turned to face him, her eyes searching his. "You've been doing a good job, Raphael. Better than I thought you could. But I'm still scared. I've spent so many years protecting Sophia from the kind of hurt you left behind. Letting you back into our lives feels risky." "I understand," Raphael said softly, "and I don't blame you for feeling that way. But I promise, Marina, I'm not going anywhere." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The only sound was the faint hum of the overhead lights and the occasional creak of the old bench beneath them. "You really turned down that tour?" Marina asked finally. "I did," Raphael said without hesitation. Marina's gaze softened, her defenses lowering just slightly. "Thank you for choosing us this time." "You don't have to thank me," Raphael said. "It was the easiest choice I've ever made." Marina looked away, her emotions swirling. She wanted to believe him, wanted to trust that this time he wouldn't let her down. But trust was fragile, and rebuilding it would take time. "I guess we'll see," she said quietly, rising from the bench. Raphael watched her walk away, his heart heavy with the weight of her guardedness. He knew it would take more than promises to earn her forgiveness, but he was willing to do whatever it took. As the door closed behind her, Raphael turned back to the piano and began to play again. This time, the melody was soft and hopeful, a reflection of the journey he was determined to complete. The conservatory was electric with anticipation. Students rushed to and fro, balancing sheet music, tuning instruments, and rehearsing last-minute passages for the big recital that evening. Parents and friends were beginning to arrive, their voices mingling with the hum of activity. Marina stood at the center of the chaos, clipboard in hand, directing everyone with calm precision. She glanced toward the stage where Raphael was helping a group of students adjust the placement of a piano. His presence had become a cornerstone of the conservatory in recent weeks, and even the most skeptical parents had warmed to him. Raphael's charm and dedication were undeniable, and his bond with Sophia had only grown stronger. Sophia ran past Marina, clutching her stuffed bunny in one hand and a small folder of sheet music in the other. She stopped abruptly when she saw Raphael and grinned, darting over to him. Raphael crouched down, listening intently as Sophia explained something with wild hand gestures. Marina couldn't hear their conversation, but the sight made her pause. For years, Marina had shielded Sophia from the pain of Raphael's absence. Now, seeing them together, she wondered if her caution was starting to shift into something else. The recital began promptly at 7. The small auditorium was packed, the seats filled with eager parents and proud family members. Raphael had offered to MC the event, stepping onto the stage with natural ease. His charisma shone as he introduced each performer, weaving anecdotes about music and its power to connect people. Marina watched from the wings, her arms crossed as she leaned against the wall. She hated how natural he made it look, how he could step into any room and captivate everyone inside. It was the very thing that had drawn her to him all those years ago, and the same thing that had made him leave. The recital unfolded beautifully, each student showcasing their progress. Some stumbled, others soared, but all were met with warm applause. When it was Sophia's turn, Raphael's voice softened as he introduced her. "Our next performer," he said, his gaze sweeping over the audience, "is someone very special to me. She's only 5 years old, but she plays with more heart than many adults I know. Please welcome Sophia." Sophia walked onto the stage with a mix of confidence and nervousness, clutching her sheet music tightly. Marina's heart swelled with pride and fear as she watched her daughter climb onto the piano bench. The room fell silent as Sophia began to play. The melody was simple yet filled with emotion, her small hands moving gracefully over the keys. Marina blinked back tears, overwhelmed by the realization of how much Sophia had grown, not just as a musician, but as a person. When Sophia finished, the audience erupted into applause. She stood beaming and gave a little bow before running offstage into Raphael's waiting arms. "You were amazing, little star," Raphael said, lifting her off the ground. "Did you see Mommy?" Sophia called, waving to Marina. "I saw," Marina said, smiling as she approached. "You were incredible." Sophia giggled, squirming in Raphael's arms until he set her down. She darted off to join her friends, leaving Raphael and Marina standing together. "She's talented," Raphael said softly. "You've done an amazing job with her, Marina." Marina hesitated, the weight of his words sinking in. She's her own person. "But thank you." After the recital, as parents and students mingled in the lobby, Marina found herself cornered by Mrs. Delgado, one of the conservatory's longest-standing supporters. "Raphael has been quite the addition, hasn't he?" Mrs. Delgado said, her tone cheerful. Marina nodded cautiously. He's been helpful. More than that, dear, Mrs. Delgado continued. He's brought so much energy to the place. And the way he's with Sophia, it's clear how much he cares about her. About you, too. Marina's cheeks flushed. It's complicated. Life always is, Mrs. Delgado said with a knowing smile. But sometimes the best things come from the most complicated places. Marina thanked her politely and slipped away, her thoughts swirling. Later that night, after Sophia had fallen asleep, Raphael lingered at the conservatory, helping Marina tidy up. The auditorium was quiet now, the echoes of applause replaced by the soft hum of the overhead lights. Long day, Raphael said, stacking chairs along the wall. Marina nodded, sweeping up stray pieces of paper and programs. But a good one. They worked in companionable silence for a while, the tension between them lighter than usual. When the room was finally in order, Raphael sat at the piano, his fingers idly tracing the keys. You've built something incredible here, he said, his voice thoughtful. It's more than a conservatory. It's a home for so many people. Marina paused, leaning on her broom. It wasn't easy, but it was worth it. Raphael turned to face her. I see that. And I want to help keep it going, Marina. Not just because of Sophia, but because of you. You've always believed in the power of music, and I want to be part of that again. Marina's gaze softened, though her voice remained measured. You're saying all the right things, Raphael, but words aren't enough. I know, Raphael said. That's why I'm still here. I'm not just talking, Marina. I'm showing up. She nodded, her defenses cracking just slightly. You've been doing better than I expected. But trust takes time, Raphael. It's not something you can rush. I'm willing to wait, he said quietly, for as long as it takes. Marina didn't respond, but the weight of his words stayed with her as they finished cleaning up. As they walked out into the crisp night air, Raphael glanced at Marina. Can I ask you something? What? She said, pulling her coat tighter around her. Do you think there's a chance for us? Not just as co-parents, but as a family. Marina froze, her breath visible in the cold air. She didn't answer right away, her mind racing. I don't know, she said finally. You hurt me, Raphael. You broke something in me that I've spent years trying to rebuild. And even now, with everything you've done, I'm not sure if I can trust you the way I once did. Raphael nodded, his expression filled with regret. I understand, but I'll keep showing up, Marina. For you, for Sophia, for us, even if it takes the rest of my life. Marina looked at him, her wall still standing but not as high as before. We'll see, she said softly. As they parted ways, Raphael stood on the steps of the conservatory, watching Marina walk away. He knew he couldn't rush her forgiveness, but he felt a glimmer of hope. For the first time in years, he believed that they might find their way back to each other, one step, one note, one day at a time. The morning sun streamed through the windows of the conservatory, casting warm rays over the polished floors. The faint sound of a piano echoed from one of the practice rooms, accompanied by the soft, cheerful hum of Sophia's voice. Marina leaned against the doorway, watching her daughter play. Her small fingers danced over the keys, not always hitting the right notes, but filling the room with joy nonetheless. Good, sweetheart, Marina said with a smile. You're getting better every day. Sophia beamed at her, the glow of pride evident on her face. Raphael said I should practice every day to get as good as him. Do you think I could? Marina hesitated, the mention of Raphael stirring the familiar ache in her chest. Over the past months, his presence had become a constant, not just at the conservatory, but in Sophia's life, and hers. It wasn't always easy, but she couldn't deny how much Raphael had done to earn her trust. Yes, Marina said softly, crouching beside her daughter. You can be as good as you want to be, Sophia. You just have to keep trying. Like Raphael? Sophia asked, her innocent gaze piercing. Marina smiled faintly, brushing a strand of hair from Sophia's face. Yes, like Raphael. Later that day, the conservatory was abuzz with excitement. A donor gala had been organized to raise funds for the school's growing needs, and Raphael had been instrumental in planning it. The main hall had been transformed into an elegant venue, with string lights draped across the ceiling and tables adorned with simple yet tasteful centerpieces. Marina moved through the crowd, greeting guests and ensuring everything ran smoothly. The event was a testament to how far the conservatory had come and how much Raphael's involvement had changed things. As the evening unfolded, Raphael stepped onto the stage, a microphone in hand. He looked out at the crowd, his confidence evident, but there was a softness in his expression that hadn't been there before. "Thank you all for being here tonight," Raphael began, his voice carrying across the room. "This conservatory isn't just a place to learn music. It's a home, a community, a family. I've been fortunate to see firsthand the incredible work Marina and her team have done here. And I've been even more fortunate to be welcomed into this family." Marina stood at the edge of the room, her arms crossed as she listened. His words, though simple, carried a sincerity that touched her. Raphael continued, "I know many of you know my story, or at least parts of it, but what you might not know is how much this place has given me. It's reminded me of why I fell in love with music in the first place. And it's given me something I never thought I'd have again, a chance to make things right." He turned to Marina, his gaze steady. "To the people I hurt most." The room fell silent, the weight of his words sinking in. Raphael let the moment linger before turning back to the audience. "Tonight, I'd like to dedicate a piece to this conservatory, to its students, and to the future it's building. But most of all, to Sophia and Marina, the two people who remind me every day what really matters." Raphael sat at the piano, his fingers hovering over the keys for a brief moment before he began to play. The melody was hauntingly beautiful, a mix of longing and hope, weaving through the room and captivating every listener. It was a piece Marina recognized, one he had written for her long ago, now reimagined with subtle changes that reflected the years and the journey they'd both endured. As the last note faded, the room erupted in applause. Raphael stood and bowed, his eyes flicking briefly to Marina, who clapped along with everyone else, her expression unreadable. The night wound down and guests began to leave. Sophia, exhausted from the excitement, had fallen asleep in a chair near the stage, her stuffed bunny clutched tightly in her arms. Marina draped a jacket over her before turning to find Raphael watching from a few feet away. "She's out," Raphael said softly, nodding toward Sophia. "She had a big day," Marina replied, smoothing Sophia's curls. Raphael hesitated before speaking again. "Thank you for letting me do this tonight. It meant a lot." "You earned it," Marina said, her voice steady but not unkind. Raphael took a step closer, his expression serious. "I don't take that lightly. I know how hard it's been for you to trust me again. I know I've hurt you in ways I can never fully make up for. But I'm gonna keep trying, Marina, for as long as it takes." Marina looked at him, her heart torn between fear and hope. She had spent so many years building walls to protect herself and Sophia, but Raphael had been quietly dismantling them brick by brick. "I see that," she said finally, "and I appreciate it, but trust takes time, Raphael. It's not something you can fix overnight." "I'm not asking for overnight," Raphael said. "I'm asking for a chance to be here for Sophia, to be here for you." Marina looked away, her gaze falling on Sophia's sleeping form. "She loves you. She doesn't say it, but I see it in the way she looks at you. And that scares me, Raphael, because if you leave again—" "I won't," Raphael interrupted, his voice firm. "I won't leave, Marina. Not ever again." The conviction in his tone made her chest ache. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to consider the possibility that he might mean it. Marina sighed. running a hand through her hair. "It's going to take time." "I'm not going anywhere," Raphael said. The next morning, Raphael showed up at Marina's apartment with a basket of pastries and 2 cups of coffee. Sophia greeted him at the door with a squeal of delight, throwing her arms around his legs. "Did you come to play with me?" Sophia asked eagerly. "I came to see you both," Raphael said, ruffling her hair. Marina appeared in the hallway, raising an eyebrow at the sight of him. "You're early." "I figured I'd start the day right," Raphael said, holding up the coffee. Marina hesitated, then stepped aside to let him in. Sophia dragged him toward the piano, already chattering about a new song she wanted to learn. As Raphael sat with Sophia, guiding her through the notes, Marina watched from the kitchen. The scene felt surreal, normal, even. For the first time, she allowed herself to imagine what a future with Raphael might look like. Not the fantasy she had once dreamed of, but something real and imperfect, built on effort and understanding. When Sophia finally tired of playing, Raphael turned to Marina. "I'd like to spend more time with her, consistently, not just at the conservatory." Marina studied him for a moment before nodding. "We'll talk about it, but it's not just up to me. It's about what's best for Sophia." "I understand," Raphael said. As he left later that day, Marina stood at the window, watching him walk down the street. For the first time, she felt a flicker of something she hadn't in years. Hope. Raphael was still far from perfect, but he was here. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough to begin again. The family wasn't whole just yet, but the melody of their lives was starting to harmonize. It wasn't about perfection. It was about showing up, learning, and playing each note with care. Together, they would compose something beautiful, one chord at a time. Enjoy the story. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button. Share your thoughts in the comments and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next thrilling episode. See you in our next video. Take care.